Fargo, North Dakota. The true state of man finally and fearlessly revealed. Man's natural condition is to deny that it is. Soon after you're born, shall I waited longer? Soon after you're born, local reality tells everyone to stay in your room. Most do, some don't. Man invented the concept of hurricanes, typhoons, and tornadoes to try and direct attention away from what was happening in their own minds. Someone could claim that it was the other way around, and they could be right, or they could be wrong. But it doesn't matter, because the situation remains as it was before I mentioned it. One day a man thought, I do so love descriptions, they mean so little. To respond to a train seeming to slow down or else going too fast by saying, I'm thinking, is of extremely questionable value. One way to help assure that your vision remains normal and squinty is to single out specific things to watch. And if you've any doubt, just check with the nearest dead deer or bagged duck. The magic of man's mental presence. Everyone's two people, the one who's here now and the one who's not. Yet another trick that humans, and only humans, can do. Daddy, is it true that the mind is quicker than the eye? They're the same, my son, the way in which they're normally done. Another maxim, scrubbed and polished for your renewed inspection. Those who pursue activities such as this are like men who realize that they have no bootstraps, yet still struggle to pull themselves up thereby. The mystic's motto, if I don't do it, who will? Another way to tell for sure if a man is more conscious or not is whether or not he ever says, give me a break. The simple of mind are always intellectually fighting a rearguard action, never advancing offenses but merely defenses of their present assigned positions. When life threw men out into the choppy seas in his little mental boat, as aid and comfort, it told him that he was completely in charge of his own navigation. Is life a world-class kidder or what? Or for those of you who'd prefer a more genteel description, is life as sharp as a 12-meter tack when it comes to the maritime management of man, or what, Commodore Scott? In the city, no man is sane unless he will insist that he is. If you're of routine consciousness, no matter where you are, your mind's not. Men enjoy domesticated pets so as to have something around the house under their control. There are two ways to appear normal. Be dumb and show it, or try to hide it. One man searched the racks for a greeting card until he found one whose company's motto was, words, when you care enough to send the least possible. Physics and this kind of thing. A fuller use of the human intellect could be called quadruple mechanics, in that such a condition would require that the mind be able to think in at least 4 different directions on any matter. Today's challenge. Cubs grow up to be bears, pups to wolves, and eaglets to eagles. So how come what happens to man? Huh? Answer me that one. If you smile right before you lie to, cheat, and nail somebody, they'll appreciate it more. But hey, a follow-up to an earlier story. But hey, if you're ordinary, you can afford for your mind to be somewhere else. Explaining his lack of interest in certain areas of ordinary human affairs, one man told a friend, "Once you realize what's going on, why would you have any interest in what other people think when you no longer even have any in what you think?" Today's explanation: the way of the few is harsh, strange, lonely, and dangerous. Except that it's not. That's right, whiny troopers. Consider yourselves explained. Come on, the man insisted. Tell me exactly what it is you're talking about. Once you put a name to a train, you have limited forever its possible destinations. As help for the many challenges before him, life provided soles for the bottom of the shoes it issued man. So why nothing similar with his mind? Further definings and full disclosures for your after-dinner enjoyment. Descriptions: the folly of the single word amplified and extended. Although unsubstantiated, don't you wish? There is this one rumor which claims that the whole notion of a more conscious person, a mystic, was taken from the appearance of the first man born without the ability to speak. Hey, I'm with you. Talk about your egregious canard. The differences between things are what the mind thinks are the differences, and what the mind thinks are the differences aren't the differences. Since normal people don't know what's going on, they like to believe that those who do are abnormal. Today's racing news. One man could write as fast as he could think, and one man could talk as fast as he could think, and still another man could think as fast as he could think. But then, wouldn't you know it, along comes this other guy who tries to exist faster than he can think about his existence. Only the simple believe they're important. Visibility and expanded awareness. The more you see, the harder it is to be seen. Though not noted in any schedules or travel brochures, all passengers on the mental train are metaphors and allegories. Papa, is this why my mind doesn't make as much sense to me as it used to? What a son, what a son. Regardless of whatever else is, which can be numerous and formidable, you will never be free unless you want to be free. A mystic takes a mind to be his friend, only at his own peril. Toxicology, a poem. There's poison for the body and poison for the mind, but the second kind's no problem since no one realizes it. Recent changes in the literary law concerning truth in verse compels me to note that while the above is not factually correct, it is operationally so for those interested in neural areas presently beyond mere thought and word. A mystic takes his mind to be a friend at his own sweet peril. Everyone's on a mission from life, and those who don't know it always believe otherwise, somehow. The routine, the foreseeable. What is ordinary and predictable is that a man turns out like he does. Is this a day for news or what? Why do people ask rhetorical questions other than to stall for time? There could be several good reasons, but I care not to answer such a dumb question. Thank you. Well, usually then they will say, well, is anybody here actually from Fargo? I myself just flew in from Bismarck, and boy, is the plane tired. It's always interesting to see what people think is going to happen. Because if you remember last time, as I predicted, we were talking about predicting. And plus, to show you how up-to-date we are in the area of mental meteorology, I'd like to run the radar here and show you what has been happening for the last 12 hours. Now, I will predict it will not change. We were in general, besides the predicting part, talking around the edges. I was mentioning in one item the sad, the heartbreaking history of man presented in a cheerful manner. And that was that a man is born one thing and then grows up to be that same thing. If this were literally correct, which I'm not saying it's not, but if it were, of what value would it be? And since I know the answer to that, I changed it around, trying to trick the simple of mind, the unwary, and those of you who are actually trying to see something, who can't be tricked. You realize, wait a minute, this sure is beginning to sound like the same thing. I mean, sometimes it sounds like it's about trains, and other times it sounds like it's about serology, and sometimes it sounds like it's about mathematics, and it sounds like it's about pulling your transmission. But when people get good, they keep thinking something about all of this begins to smell like it's about the same thing. And not incorrectly, many people begin to think, and I can almost get what it is. Most people that ever get that far mentally get sort of rocked to sleep on the train. And they have in the past then gone to the idea that, wait a minute, now I know what it is. It's God. Or religion in some way. So then once they put a name to the train, they be done for. And of them, nothing else is heard. To themselves, nothing else is heard. That is, they give up. Did I lose you already? That many people get to the point, not just being around me, but they have read, let's say, all sorts of would-be mystical literature, religious literature. And they read things written in China, 1000 BC. And then they read something in Greece, 500 BC. And then they read something written in Germany, 1200 AD. A wide spectrum, all sorts of apparent religious backgrounds, and many people get to the point of suspecting, they feel like that all of this is about the same damn thing. And they keep thinking, sure, I'm close to it. I almost got it figured out. And it's as though, if life really had enough time to consider you important, any of us, and to look down, well, people like this. They always like to feel like they're important. It's as though life just casually looks down and goes, uh-oh, there's another one about to, pop a blister down on his brain. There's somebody about to see what's going on, that kind of thing. And so it's like he goes, ooh, and makes the person go, wait a minute. Why didn't I see this before? They're all talking about, I kept working on it, I kept studying all sorts of metaphysical literature and this and that and trying to be weird and do, but after all these years it suddenly strikes me, all this is they're talking about God. And life goes, phew. Another idiot bites the dust. Another boy or girl goes back to their room where I told them to stay to start with. Just as historically that has been the final relief of people who believe that they were seeing something in common with everything. There is something in common with all this. There is a focal point. It is all about the same thing. And rather than put a name just on what it is, consider why, if there is one thing to see in life, why you cannot see it through the mind. People take it to be natural, a natural state of man, that how life should be is open to debate, is open to discussion, is certainly open to improvement, is open to change. And within those 4 or 5 verbs, you could add your own variations, you could add your own subcategories that men believe in their mind we're talking about quite ordinary, middle of the road, the ordinary man. And by ordinary, by now, everyone knows that I mean that in no negative sense. Ordinary is ordinary. Ordinary is the heart of humanity. Ordinary is the general gene pool from which you sprang, even if you tried to be unordinary. It is the sanity in the middle of the parade. It is civilization on the hoof. It is ordinary people being ordinary. It is ordinary people just being as they should. But even amongst them, that group, those who would consider themselves to be a bit more insightful, intellectual, socially concerned, etc., they would still describe that the natural state of man, mentally speaking, the natural state of man is for him to discuss, for him to debate, and for there to be a continuing discussion, an intellectual byplay between the right wing, the left wing, between Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, everybody. Now that is at the best possible level within the ordinary slice, within the ordinary scope of quite ordinary people. As they would say, well, that is what keeps things going. That is, in fact, sort of a non-scientific explanation of the scientific method. That things must be tested, and the way you test your ideas, not objective science necessarily, but the way you test your ideas in the social realm, is by putting them out there, putting them to a test, let other people examine them, let somebody say, well, I've considered your idea of how we should handle morality, sexuality, commerce, whatever, and I've decided that although you may have some good points there, here is how I would change and correct your view, and etc. The observation is made correctly on how things work, but then the ordinary mind takes that to be a final statement, a final operational statement of what life is, which I've tried to get you to consider, not just to play with words, that that's not actually life. That's reality. That is what the mind makes of life, and that too is not a pejorative judgment of the mind thus far. That's the natural state of the mind. But for people to say life is whatever we collectively think it is, no, that's reality. Or for them to say life itself is, or will be perhaps someday, the output of the correct dialogue between all of the good, decent, forthright, civilized minds working together. That's reality. That's the parade. That is why when your consciousness is at that level, all you can see is the immediate vicinity. All you can see are local examples. And that's why no one can predict what's going on, even if it were possible. That's why it's just ridiculous, and people actually know it, even though they'll pay to hear it. Yes, tell me what will happen. And they know. Well, we're back to that old problem of what a kidder life is. That people absolutely know, people who's paid money to consult a psychic, a card reader, an economist, a business advisor, an attorney, a psychiatrist. If they've done it more than once, they know that the advice, they know that the foretelling of the future, that is, the diagnosis and the prescription of what will happen and what you should do, anyone with a modicum, even a semi or quivi modicum of intelligence, knows that it's useless. But that stops no one. It's not supposed to. But while you're in the midst of the parade, it cannot be improved. It's not because you checked with the wrong psychic or the wrong mystic or the wrong financial advisor. Because as long as they're in the midst of the parade, and all you got to do is tell if they're taking it seriously, if they're actually holding themselves out, yes, pay me and I'll tell you what's going to happen. Then right away you know he's an idiot. That is, you know he's ordinary. And of course, if you're there about to pay him, do not too quickly look down thy nose. There's nothing else, perhaps ask him if he needs a partner. If you buy into the business, you're obviously more or less where you belong. You cannot predict what's going on, and prediction, obviously, or should be obviously, is not the ultimate point to this. You cannot understand what's going on. All you do is look, and the local conditions, there's always something to be upset about. In the midst of the parade, it's moving. You're surrounded by people who, to say the obvious, are not all exactly like you. And believe it or not, from their view, everyone around them is not exactly like them. I know, There's no accounting for some of the insanity of people, but trust me. I like the way some of you actually take some of that stuff seriously when I run off like that, and you go, well, that could be true. Snap out of it. It's beyond it could be true. I mean, it's past the point of even putting one of those large, number 20, red rubber bands around your head to snap out of it. This should be down to the point that you have sliced up with a nice carving knife an inner tube. I mean, it should be a large one. There's making of no sense at the local level to try and understand what's going on in life. But then people will continue to do it, and as long as you do that, life has also kidded you again, in that you think that the divisions, the diversity, which has got to be brought into some sort of unity, but the kind of complexity that seems to be, which the ordinary mind takes not as a positive matter. Now, I'm sure somebody can stand up here and periodically, they always have, and say, oh, it's good that we live here, and somebody in Greece, it's good that we've brought all these slaves from Egypt, that we've got all these Macedonians running through our streets, and who knows what they're plotting, but it's nice to have them here because they have a different kind of music. I mean, they got that accent and offbeat, whereas we've been for years playing that 1-2, 1-2, just like Lawrence Welk. And somebody will stand up and say, it's good to have that kind of diversity. That is not the common collective consciousness of humanity. Because their feeling is, even if they pay some lip service to tolerance, and let's take in new ideas, I don't have to preach if you have any intelligence at all. You know that is not true. That is simply life. Sort of like life has the periodic appearance out in front of the parade. If you're in the middle of it, you think it's up to the front, and it seems to be suddenly a new drum major. That suddenly you see this baton go up, and you see this big high hat, and a guy says some little words of encouragement, like, boy, we're moving along now. What we should do is all be less angry. Yeah, and he throws up the baton, and a few people around you go, yeah, and he disappears. You never think about it again. Now maybe he'll fall into some sort of folklore, and they'll make up a myth about one time a bunch of us, and it wasn't just me, that we saw this big high hat, different kind of feathers and stuff on it, and it was suddenly out there in front of the parade, or awfully close, and he hollered, we should all be less angry. Tell them, well, you were there, you saw it, and they go, yeah. Another generation, it's a myth. 2 generations, hell, it could become a religion. The point is, those kind of comments, which religions are full of them, common wisdom, proverbial wisdom, are full of just comments. You could pick up, if you knew what you were doing, you were trying to run a school for the mystical liberation of the mind, you could pick up a book of German proverbs from the Middle Ages, Greek proverbs from the turn of the century. You could pick up proverbial wisdom anywhere, a book from any country, and you could run a school off any of them. Just anything that your grandmother might have said you could use. That doesn't prove anything. But people will pay lip service to it, and it is like the pre-echo on an old vinyl record that you hear the future. People do not recognize it. They've been hearing the future for years, which is part of the purpose of the verbiage of religion, is you're hearing what would be a more conscious person, of saying, well, don't turn the other cheek. Love those who despise you. In the full operational sense of that internally, that is a description of a more conscious man, which they are describing. And notice that was 2,000 years, even in the Western world, ahead of its time at least, that is what a more conscious person would be. And you can assume, if you'd like to follow the picture of my parade, that unless life changes its mind, since it's made man continue to repeat that somewhere in the future that will be more of a reality than it is now. And so men do hear some sorts of shouts from the future, but it just becomes proverbial wisdom if it's remembered. It becomes, if nothing else, they will hide it within they'll stick it in the mouth of an imagined God. Oh, well, that's just something that a God said, and we can't aspire to that. But in the midst of the parade, a man's mind looks around, and it is all far too complex, and complex in a negative sense, that there are people out of step, people with wrong ideas, people with destructive ideas, people who, no matter how nice you try to be to them, they're going to try and trip you, they're going to kick you, they're going to try to pick something's wrong. That is what keeps the parade moving from a 3-dimensional view. Because if everyone were in actual lockstep, if everyone did merge into this one being marching, that'd be the end of the parade. It will not happen. It takes the conflict, as it appears to be, to fuel the machinery of collective humanity. Now, that's enough. Most people could never even see that. But that's child's play. It's a lot better than that. Because they're still seeing reality, and the complexity of the problem is here. And I say problem advisedly. They consider the problem that these people out here, there are too many people out here, and I can pinpoint them. Say, sane, ordinary, decent people. They'll say, I can pinpoint you right in my neighborhood, in my profession, in our community. People that we have got to do something about. Now, I'm not talking about the fringes of society, the fringes of the parade. We're not talking about the physical criminal element. We're talking about nowadays, which has been increasingly that way, shouldn't be in use to you, the problems have increasingly become, the conflicts have increasingly become, to people's minds, to their minds, a mental aspect. It is not totally correct, because anytime you try and ignore the marking of territory, that kind of instinct, the stomach, the sex organs, anytime that you try and dismiss or try and imagine, well, we are progressing to the point that we will simply become this brain over here in this jar in this cheap science fiction movie, then you're getting awfully close to the fringe of the parade. The point is, people will continue to fight, or they're continuing to fight. Don't put me in the position of playing prognosticator. Let's leave it at this. They're fighting right now. People in the Western Hemisphere, for those of you in the Western Hemisphere, everyone considers that your ilk, or at least at the front of the parade. We have people right now in parts of Europe who wear suits and ties, graduate from high school, and they're killing each other. Big news. They continue to kill each other, and so it's not that within the parade that there is not physical mayhem. But notice, they try increasingly to explain it as being non-physical motivated, non-territorial, that they're not simply. I mean, it may come into discussion that, well, yeah, we want to get back some of our territory, which is at the basis of it. But they increasingly attempt to describe it as being an ideological, that is, an intellectual-based conflict. That we are the freedom fighters here in country X, and we're only fighting against this General so-and-so. He took over power without a free election. It was a coup, and I'm here, I've got other people who've been mistreated here, and it's our duty to try and, if they're trying to get money out of certain countries, they're going to say democracy. We're trying to put in a good fascist or a communist regime, according to whoever will help finance them. And they say that it's an ideological argument. That's reality. If that's all you can see, if you take that seriously and you go, well, by God, that's true. Well, you're still in your room. Life don't have to worry. You're not only in your room, you're in kindergarten in the cloak closet. And then you're not ever going to get out. There is no such. People are not fighting for ideas. People are fighting for power. But they explain it now. They believe that within the heart of the parade, that is, it's not oxymoronical to them, that within the civilized world nowadays, conflict is ideological. It is no longer simply territorial. It is not people attempting. It's not the Romans trying to invade parts of Gaul to take in new slaves. No. Now it is more, it's theories. It's fascists fighting communists, socialists fighting Republicans. There appears to be now a absolutely irreversible, inescapable, damn near all-consuming, ideological, you understand by that I mean mental, aspect to conflict there in the parade, not physical. Again, we're not talking about the fringes of society. The people say that that's criminal. That is, that you still have people that even the middle of the parade has to deem to be physically driven to commit their nefarious acts, rapists, muggers, murderers. But they're individuals, and they're considered to be anomalies. It's a different thing now when you have half of a country has turned on half of a country, and you've got 1 million people fighting another million people. And the 1 million people, they do not say, that, well, we're doing this to mug them, or all of us are going to rape all of them. If you ask them, why in the world would you do this? They used to be your brothers here in that country. They used to be your neighbors. Well, yeah, but they went down the wrong political road. There is now, it's acceptable. It does no good. I'm not trying to make sarcastic jokes. I'm trying to make you see something. But it would do no good if I were trying to make sarcastic jokes. I'd end up being some kind of low-level would-be political comedian. Just a run-of-the-mill smartass. That's not the point. It's easy to make fun of it. It is part of their reality, though, that this is what's going on. But the part that I said that people normally never get past is, in spite of the way it appears, that in spite of the fact that it's their accepted form of reality, here is where it's going on, and here is where it's always been going on. That they describe it as being some sort of conflict out here that we must resolve, some sort of if it's not actual conflict, being driven by internal mental conflict, then it is, back to the basis I said, of a bit more civilized dialogue wherein we have opposing views, but rather than take up actual arms against one another, it is the debate, the healthy political debate. We'll throw open different economic models into a free economy, and we'll see which one survives. It is always the matter that reality is fragmented, and it's attempting to adjust itself, that we've got to come to better ideas, we've got to form a better government, we've got to form a more equitable economic system, a judicial arrangement that is fair to all, and etc. All of that was brand new news. It's in here that fragments it out there. Now, there's nothing wrong, which is about the end of most would-be mystical systems, that people long before you and I were on this planet, that somebody had come up with that, and people still come up with, wait a minute, most of the problems going on out here are just a reflection of the problems going on in us. And you can say that under the right conditions, and you can round up a nice group of people, especially if they can't afford a psychiatrist. You say, well, I charge a lot less than a psychiatrist. They'll go, well, hell, I'll show up. Because it sounds as though this is some explanation, and it doesn't even have to be presented deeply or in a deep metaphysical sense. It's just people say, well, do you realize it's something in the human mind? Even the people that would say this now, they could not make it an unconditional statement. They would have to make the observation that parts, perhaps significant parts, of the conflicts that seem to rise amongst people are not actually out there, but they're here. Which, if that sounds strange, that would be explained nowadays by unconscious motivations. The kinds of traumas, traumas in the wide sense of the word, the kind of experiences that all people have had at early, tender ages, or else at later ages, but they were so terrifying, so unacceptable, that men are no longer conscious of them, and therefore they project them out there. And people go, And it sounds as though it's more up to date and we're getting somewhere, which is just simply the battle between God and the snake, just redone. But now it sounds, well, wait a minute, we're talking about the human mind now. We're not talking about some idea of Jehovah or gods. Ha! I'm up to date. I'm talking about man's unconscious mind. Of course, I'll tell you how up to date it is, by the way, those of you who like to know. There's some artists now working in Mexico, even as we speak, that are about to put out a whole new series, not just Jesus paint on black velvet and God, but the unconscious mind. It's going to be paint on black velvet, and they'll be for sale here in the States shortly. Did anyone get the... You will find man's unconscious mind on the same day that you lay your finger right on Allah. You walk up like in a grocery store, if they're giving some prize, you go, you're Allah, you're God, and then he has to buy your groceries or give you You will find man's unconscious mind on that same day. It'll be the same thing. Back to what I was... Before I got off a little, I guess. The mind is fragmented. That is not a theory. It's not my theory, and it's not anybody's theory. And you either see it or you don't. And if you consider that, well, wait a minute, I'm going to have to think about this and write it down and take a lifelong struggle, you know, at least life doesn't have to worry. I'll be glad to report, yes, he's still in his room. Shows no signs of coming out. That, yes, I'm going to have to study this. May I go back for a second to this kind of cheap theatrics? Here I go. Got to study that. I mean, I point out that your mind is fragmented and it operates in a way that is totally linear, that it completely chops up. It stares here and it stares there, does that. And it goes on like that. And that's what makes life look to be choppy and fragmented. And a person goes, well, that's an interesting theory. And they might make notes, and they might go out here later if they heard me say it or heard somebody say it, and go out with their friends and want to discuss it. And go, what does that sound familiar? I wonder, is there a book on that? Back to my cheap theatrics. What the hell kind of person is that they're going to have to study? Does it ever cross their mind to go, wait a minute, and go, well, I'll be damned. It's true. Yeah. But there it is. Again, the difference and the similarity of how far removed this sort of activity is from ordinary sane life. I mean we're talking about yoga sitting nude in the snow in Tibet and never moving and starving themselves and chanting the strange God. Yeah, right. How strange and how far away it is, assuming you can get anything between you and... But you got to understand how much it helps when it's like this. There's a form of, there is no medical diagnosis for it, but it's a vision flaw in man. That when something's like that, you can try it yourself with your hand. I keep doing it, and try and see, like the wrinkles in your hand, and you do that, and you can't. And so it's a lot easier. If I said, there's the wrinkles, there is the mystical message. Let's just say that allegorically. And you try, and you can't see it. And so you could do that, and it's kind of cut out the light, and you could relax from it. Your hand might be cool. And as far as mystical matters, think how much better, how much more promising it would seem then to start picturing this wise old, God knows how old, nude, skinny guy with a beard and a turban sitting in the snows up on a high mountain. And he's meditating. He's in touch with the cosmos. And he's on the other side of the world. And he may be dead by now. You'll never find him. It's understandable. And yet, but the mind thinks, well, I can't see it. Well, for one reason you can't see it, when you get too close to something. In case you think I'm losing the allegory, you are. When you get this close, it's all too, oh, I don't know, unified? Yeah. Everybody can try it. You look, and if something's right there in your eye, unless you let your mind wander, which is what I was trying to get you to picture about, the mind would then go, well, wait a minute, this is not mystical. Plus, oh, I was just reading about that guy sitting up there in the mountains of Tibet. Besides that, the thing is, looking right there, there's actually nothing to think about. You know why? Or I'll put it to you better. There's nothing that the mind can think about. You know why? All right, I'll answer. Because it's just one thing. It's just one piece. And it's right there in your eye. And you think, well, geez, if at least you get away, then it makes a little sense. Well, of some kind. You may not get a message, but at least you think, well, maybe I should try it another way. If I said, all right, I'm going to show you as best I can physically. I'm going to show you what the enlightenment shows people. I'm going to show you what the secret, I'm going to show you what's going on in life. As best I can physically. It doesn't mean it's going to work, but I'm going to give you the best shot possible right now. And I said, now close your eyes. And you closed your eyes. And that you had some faith in what I was doing. And I said, all right, now just sit still. And I took my hand like that, and I put it over your eye, one of them, or both of them. And I said, now open your eyes. And you opened your eyes. And I said, well. And your feeling would be, even being charitable to me, your feeling would be, well. And I go, that's it. What do you make of it? What can you say? But then if I went, well, then you could do something. Your mind then would start. If you were so inclined, you might go, well, now it had to be. This is your mind talking to yourself. Now, I'm not making fun of it, but here's you go, well, it had to be some kind of allegorical message, because let's say that when you first opened your eyes, that you weren't even sure it was my hands. You knew that something was on your eyes, but you weren't even sure it was the palms of my hands. It could have been You know, I could have had pieces of calf's liver or something, you know. The point is, I had it right here, and so you open it, and you're not even sure. Now, we're running 4 or 5 allegories simultaneously, but I knew that's the way you'd want it. So. But if I move it away, the mind can then think something. You can go, well, it's obviously hands. You can begin then to make it, the mind would call it, I can begin to think about it. Or I can begin to analyze it. But I can begin to think about it. Maybe there was something about, it's hands. In other words, you can then begin to chop it up and it becomes fragmented. When things are not fragmented to the mind, of course, I can't deal with this because literally, even though this may have sounded like a crude, on-the-spot metaphor, you cannot see something when it's right in your eye. That's obvious. Everybody knows that. But I tell you what's not obvious. If you could take an ordinary person and make them suddenly be more conscious, if you could wake up their consciousness to another level, if that were possible. Now, this can't be done, but follow me right quick. That you could do it, and they didn't do it. You could do it, and they weren't ready for it. The point was, in other words, you could do this to them, it'd be the same situation. They'd feel like, well, I didn't see anything. Again, I'll point out for those of you that it's after the fact, but it's very possible that some of you in the past had psychedelic drug experiences that, I don't mean the whole experience over hours, but that you reached some little edge that you were on the point of feeling like, well, I'm about to see something. You just knew that the nervous system was about to go into some other area, and you drew a blank. Could have been a second, who knows how long. And then you kind of went on. You ended up on the train worrying about God or believe you were talking to the microorganisms on Jupiter. But there is the point wherein consciousness reaches a new level, and it's like this. But when it's this close, it cannot be seen. When you're in the midst of life and you look around, all you see are these local examples. Other people, individuals, different ideas, and there is no cohesion to it. People are not in step with you. People are bumping into you. Some people seem, there's always somebody saying, let's turn this parade around. Or, hey, let's go this way. Let's go that way. And remember, this is not just physical. It's up here now. Well, it's always been, but now it's even by those in the parade, it's assumed that here is the more important aspect of our complexity, of our division. This being the natural state of man, if you try and tell those in that state, back to my short, sad history of man, cheerfully revealed that a man is born one thing and then grows up to be that thing. People go, what in the hell does that mean? The sentence makes perfectly good sense. I mean, it couldn't be simpler, but since it couldn't, I redid it in several ways. After all of that, see if any of these sound any, if they have been altered. Maybe while I laid them over there was some sort of magic, because the camera wasn't on it all the time. And I had an assistant come over and switch them, and now I had these other versions. Or screw that. Why do I need an assistant? I'll just start reading them, and I'll change it. How will you know? That's the kind of thing that sounds like it could be of some significance until you think, all right, even if you did, so what? That's what I keep asking you about, what you normally think. You go, well, what if what I just thought was true? And I can say, well, all right, what if it is? So what? And people will go, well, he's just being a sore header. He's mad about it. Here we go, reread. If you're of routine consciousness, no matter where you are, your mind's not. There you are on the parade. I don't know where you are. Who knows how you got there? Well, I do know, but we're not going into it. We've already been into it. But there you are. And if you're routine, there you are. Your mind is never there. The only time your mind's ever there, if someone says, your mind's never there, you go, oh. It's like your mind, you can reel it in like some sort of Jesus, I don't know. Sailfish on extreme amounts of speed that they can pop in and just gone again. You go, do you realize your fish is never in your head? And you go, yeah, it is. That was not all. As someone once suspected, and I will not admit it, someone wrote me and said that they thought that these nights when there are like 20 or 30 or 50 items, I don't know why I should tell you this, but somebody wrote and says they thought that somehow they thought a lot of them were connected. Boy, I get some weird mail. They follow up to an earlier story. This one, as a matter of fact. It was called, But Hey! That was the title, the heading. They follow up to an earlier story. But hey, if you're ordinary, you can afford for your mind to be somewhere else. What difference does it make? It's only people, that is the beginning and the end of other, in case some of you have not been exposed to it, would be translations of past mystical disciplines and etc., is you got to be able to hold your attention right here. That you got to put your mind in the here and now. And since it's based upon the heart of life itself, before man begins to turn life into reality. In other words, since it's based on something useful, many, many people go, my God, that's a great idea. And they don't have to be mystical. You can get just ordinary, educated, intellectually sophisticated people and say, do you realize how much time your mind is just wandering, worrying about the past or dreaming about stuff in the future? Not serious plans, which we all must do, you'd tell the ordinary guy, but just your mind just wandering like, oh God, boy, I bet that root canal at work's going to hurt like hell tomorrow. What good does that do a person? And you can get ordinary people go, you're right. And I could say, or you could tell them, you could say, did you know I read a book that said that you'd be a lot better off, that we should all be trying to make our mind just be aware of what's going on right now. And you can get quite ordinary, regular people go, that's true. And immediately they'll think, I should go buy a book. I was going to the bookstore. You understand? It's not in praise of irony. It's predictable. Irony, why I keep saying that Captain Irony is not going to show up and fly in like I used to threaten. There is no such thing as irony. Irony is just a genteel synonym for stupidity. Because irony says unexpected results. If you'll pardon one more bout of cheap theatrics. Unexpected results. Does that strain your head? The unexpected results. Do you understand? If it's possible to know what's going on in life, there's no such thing as unexpected results. Which I'm getting to was the last item tonight, but I believe I may have already mentioned it several times, I don't know, since I've known you. There's no such thing as irony. For people to go, God, that's ironic. Which is say, I never expected, based upon what had happened before, I never expected that. Well, that's their privilege. But to say, by God, that's ironic. It passes, in fact, for a form of rather urbane, hip, social observation, if not criticism. That a man will look and say, how ironic. To begin with, he's got a better vocabulary than most of us bricklayers and drywall men to even know the word ironic. But ironic, it sounds as though, there are things going on in the complex web of human affairs that now and then will bring forth a surprising result. Doesn't that sound a lot better than saying, well, I'll be damned, I never think that'd happen. And especially to go, wait a minute, that was inevitable. God, was I stupid not to realize that? And his friend says, you should have said that's ironic. Oh, I'm sorry, that's ironic. But hey, if you're ordinary, you can afford for your mind to be somewhere else. What I was saying there, you could get people without attributing there to any mystical connotations and just get them. People will admit that their mind, some of the time, you can't ever be absolute with them. But you would say, I read this book that pointed out that some people, or many people, much of the time, their mind is not really on what they're doing right now. It just wanders. They're refighting yesterday's wars. They're planning tomorrow's battles, which may never occur. just an ordinary man. Go, that's true. That's true. Oh, Jesus. In fact, I was just thinking. No, that was not Captain Irony that flew by. But you see, they cannot do it. It is not natural. But if you're ordinary, even after they would pay lip service, let us say that you're right. And I know there have been courses that did not purport to be mystical at all. There have been courses and people wrote books. Your mind should be here and now. Or generally they say the whole person, but they'll say your mind, your attention should be here and now, that anything other than that, except for necessary planning, but anything other than that, your mind should be here and now, not just wandering out and refighting all the past insults, replaying all the sad scenes of your life. And a person will go, yeah, you're right. But they cannot apply it. It is not natural. And even though they may say that would be true and I should pursue that myself, the follow-up, but hey, if you're ordinary, you can afford it. Which is another way of saying it's not necessary to change. You're not supposed to change. Because if you're ordinary, you can afford for your mind to be anywhere but here. Simple proof, as always, I do not deal in theories, I have none. Simple proof. So everybody like to write this down. Don't fall for that. Just take it right quick. I'll take a second. Just glance upstairs. If you've got any genetic history of your own, any non-fragmented history of your life, for me to point out that you can easily afford, I said if you're of ordinary consciousness, everybody at the ordinary level, you can afford for your mind to be anywhere. You can always afford for it to be somewhere else. And again, a little cheap theatrics of somebody thinking, well, is that true? What do you mean is that true? How old are you? All of you look over the age of puberty, that you're out on your own. You've made it this far. Your mind's been somewhere else most of the time. There it is. You don't have to worry about, well, that's an interesting theory he's got. Are you crazy? Am I wasting my absolute time? It's no theory. You just think, well, wait a minute. My mind has never, it's almost impossible for a man who has anything resembling, let us say, an objective memory. You're hard-pressed, if at all, that you can even be sure that your mind has ever been right where you were at that moment. I mean, if you think right now, could you prove it? Can you, not to me, but can you be sure that you have lived 1 second? All right, 3 seconds in a row. 3 seconds. I know I pushed it. I was going to say 1, but by God, let's be men and women. 3 seconds. Can you even be sure, if you have anything resembling that kind of clinical sang-froid memory, are you positive? Can you be sure that you've ever lived 3 consecutive seconds and your mind was right immediately, totally, right there on what you were doing? Can you be sure? And unless you are just an ordinary person, you cannot be sure. Which is not the end of it. We're not here to prove I'm right. Then you're supposed to say, but the news item's right. My mind's never been exactly where I was, and so what? Here I'm 35 years old, I got $50,000 in the bank, good job, and a new car. It should make you go. And then to think, there are people struggling to be more conscious? Hell, I'm not even conscious, and I made it this far. I mean, I am really slapping words around to call myself conscious once you see it. But that's not the point. It's not to make you feel bad. It's to realize, well, it doesn't matter. On to the next one. Take them out of order, as if you would care. Everyone's on a mission from life. And those who don't know it always believe otherwise. Somehow. These are all, I'll go ahead and admit it, these are all connected, I think. Today's racing news, one man could ride as fast as he could think, one man could talk as fast as he could think, and the other another man could think as fast as he could think, and then wouldn't you know it, this one guy shows up, and he tries to exist faster than he can think about existing. I will agree, assuming that you have some glimpse of it, that you would not be the same person consciously. Something extraordinary. All you got to do is try it. It's not something to worry about that, well, I'll go move to a monastery and work on it for years. Give yourself a break. Don't make me say it for you, because then you're not more conscious when you have to say, give me a break. You don't have to have a break. All you got to do is walk out of here or do it now. Let's stop the tape and see if you can hold your mind right here on one thing. See if you can do it for 3 seconds. See if you can do it for 5 seconds. Show me up to be the deluded idiot that I am. Show me that you can actually do it for 3 seconds and go, ha! After that, we won't speculate on what will happen after you get the 3 second mark. Ha! He was wrong. Well, I always remember. That would be one I was going to say, to wrap it up. It would absolutely, I'll agree, I'll assure you, I'll admit, try it yourself. Like I said, it's not a theory, just try it. If you could hold your mind on right here, your life would absolutely, drastically change. So much so that people can't really start from doing that. That's not the only reason. But just try it. It's not a theory. It's not something you have to go off and worry about. It's not something you can do tomorrow. Do it now, as soon as I shut up, as soon as we stop the tape. And if you don't like it now, here's what I'd suggest. Tonight at 11 o'clock, do it. Try it for 3 seconds. And those of you who are really anxious to forge ahead, do it again at 11:17 and then at 11:40 and then go to bed. And the last thing when you go to sleep, say artichokes. And then when you wake up in the morning, at least, the first thing your mind says is artichokes, and just hold it for those 3 seconds. And wake up at 7:22 in the morning without a clock. Back to, if you could just do it for 3 seconds, your life would not be the same. But consider this last news item I read. One guy wanted to exist faster than he could think about it. That is past the point of simply being in the middle of the parade and being aware of where you are all the time then, or at least 3 seconds at a time. Here's a guy that wanted to be aware of where he was faster than he could think about where he was. We've gone from being more conscious to being really more conscious. I know that was a hard term to deal with. And the last one, the routine, the foreseeable, which is the same one where we started tonight and the last time we were taping. I just changed it around. What is ordinary and predictable is that a man turns out like he does. I regret leaving on that sad note, but tape's out.